The explosions lit up space like dying stars. Admiral Tejo gripped the rail of his command bridge as another Allied ship broke apart in the distance. The metal twisted and screamed as the Devourer machines tore it to pieces. He had seen this same sight for weeks now. Ship after ship, world after world, all gone. "Sir, the Kelthari defense line is falling back," reported Min-Su from his communication station. The young officer's blue skin had turned pale with fear. His forearms moved quickly over the controls, trying to keep contact with the retreating fleets. "They've lost half their ships in the last hour." Tejo nodded but said nothing. What could he say? The Kelthari were some of the best fighters in the galaxy. If they were falling back, it meant the end was close. He looked at the main screen showing the battle. The Devourer ships moved like a dark wave across space. They were not like normal ships at all. They looked like giant metal triangles, each one bigger than a city. They moved without sound, without warning, and they destroyed everything they touched. "How many civilian ships made it out of the Zephyr system?" he asked. Hyajin looked up from her strategy table. The tall, silver-skinned woman had been working for 3 days without sleep. Her usually bright eyes were dim with exhaustion. "Maybe 30%, sir. The Devourers hit the evacuation points before most ships could escape. 30%. That meant millions of people were gone." Just like that. Tejo had been fighting wars for 40 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Devourers didn't just kill. They consumed everything. Planets, ships, even the space dust. They turned it all into more of their machines. And with each world they took, they became stronger. Another explosion shook the bridge. This time it was closer. Much closer. "Sir, the ethereal ship Crystal Wind just went dark," Min-Su reported. His voice cracked as he spoke. The ethereals were supposed to be immortal. Their ships were made of living crystal that could heal itself. If they were dying, then nothing was safe. Tejo walked to the front of the bridge and stared out at the battle. In the distance, he could see the massive forms of the Borvani Titan-class ships. They were huge, mountain-sized vessels that housed entire families of the rock-like Borvani people. Right now, they were fighting desperately against 3 Devourer ships. The Titans fired their planet-killer weapons again and again, but the Devourer ships just absorbed the energy and kept coming. "The Mindweavers are requesting permission to attempt a group link," said Hyjin. "They want to try to confuse the Devourer machines with a psychic attack." "Tell them yes," Tejo said. "Tell them to try anything they can think of." He knew it wouldn't work. The Mindweavers had tried their psychic powers before. The Devourers had no minds to attack. They were just machines. Cold, calculating machines that followed their program to consume and grow. But he had to let them try. Everyone deserved the chance to fight back, even if it was hopeless. The battle had been going on for 6 hours now. 6 hours of watching the greatest military forces in the galaxy get torn apart like paper. The Galactic Council had brought together every species, every ship, every weapon they had. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "Sir, long-range sensors show more Devourer ships coming from the outer systems," reported the sensor officer, a small, furry creature named Jun-Ho. "At least 50 more ships. They'll be here in 2 hours, 50 more ships." Tejo closed his eyes and took a deep breath. They barely had enough ships left to fight the Devourers that were already here. 50 more would end everything. He thought about his homeworld of Nexus Prime. It was still safe, protected by the defense fleets around the core worlds. But not for long. If they lost here, the Devourers would reach the core worlds in days. Billions of people would die. Entire civilizations would end. "Min-Su, open a channel to all ships," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." Tejo took another deep breath. He had to tell them. All the captains, all the crews, all the brave people who had come here to make a last stand. They deserve to know the truth. "This is Admiral Tejo to all Council forces. I won't lie to you. We're losing this fight. The Devourers are too strong, too many, but we're not giving up. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for our people to escape. Every shot we fire might save a life somewhere else. We fight not because we can win, but because it's right." He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. They were all young, all scared, but they were still at their posts, still doing their jobs. "I'm proud to serve with all of you. Whatever happens next, remember that we stood together when it mattered most." He nodded to Min-Su to close the channel. The young officer's hand shook as he worked the controls. "Sir?" said Hyajin quietly. "I've been thinking. There's one more thing we could try." "What is it?" "The dead sector. The restricted communication channels that lead there. We could send a distress signal. Taeho frowned. The dead sector was the region of space where humanity used to live, before they vanished 300 years ago. No one knew what happened to them. Some said they destroyed themselves in a war. Others thought they just left for another galaxy. But everyone agreed that the sector was empty now. Dead. There's nothing out there, Hee-jin. Humanity is gone. Maybe, she said. But what if they're not? What if they're just hiding? The old emergency protocols say that in case of galaxy-wide disaster, we should try all communication channels, even the dead ones. Taeho looked at the battle raging outside. Another council ship exploded as he watched. They were down to maybe 100 ships now. In an hour, they'd be down to 50. In 2 hours, they'd all be gone. Do it, he said. Send the signal on all channels, even the ones to the dead sector. As Minsu worked to prepare the transmission, Taeho wondered if anyone would even hear it. The dead sector had been silent for 3 centuries. But Hee-jin was right about one thing. They had to try everything, even the impossible, because right now the impossible was all they had left. 3 days had passed since the great battle ended. The Devourer machines had won just as everyone knew they would. Now they moved through the broken fleets like sharks through blood, picking apart the wreckage and turning it into more of themselves. Junho kept his refugee ship hidden behind a large asteroid. He was old now, his gray beard reaching down to his chest. He had fought in 12 wars, but nothing like this. Around him, 30 other ships stayed quiet and dark. Families, children, scientists, anyone who had escaped the massacre. They were all that was left of the Great Council fleets. Captain, the Devourers are moving past us toward the inner systems, whispered his navigator, a young woman named So Young. She had been studying the enemy machines for months, trying to understand how they worked. Her research station was covered with notes and drawings of Devourer technology. Junho nodded but kept watching the sensors. 3 massive Devourer ships drifted by their hiding spot, each one carrying pieces of destroyed Council vessels. The machines were patient. They never rushed. They just methodically took apart everything they found and added it to their growing fleet. How long before they reach the core worlds? He asked quietly. At their current speed, maybe 5 days. So Young replied. But Captain, I've been studying their behavior patterns. Something's changed. They're not just consuming randomly anymore. They're learning from what they take. Each ship they absorb makes them smarter. That was the thing that scared Junho the most. The Devourers had always been dangerous because they were so many and so strong. But now So Young was saying they were getting smarter too. He watched one of the machine ships extend long metal arms to grab a piece of a Keltari cruiser. The arms moved with purpose, taking specific parts and leaving others behind. What are they looking for? He asked. I think they're studying our weapons, So Young said. Look at this data from the battle. She showed him her screen. They always take the weapon systems first, then the shield generators, then the engines. It's like they're learning how we fight so they can fight us better. On another ship in their small fleet, Dongwu sat alone in his communication room. He was thin and pale, spending most of his time listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. For 3 days he had heard nothing but silence from the core worlds and cries for help from the outer colonies. The galaxy was dying and he was listening to it happen. But today was different. Today he had found something strange. Captain Junho, this is Dongwu on the research vessel Starhope. I need to speak with you immediately. Junho's voice came back through the emergency channel. What is it, Dongwu? Are the Devourers coming back? No, sir, it's something else. I picked up a signal. A response to Admiral Taeho's last transmission. It came from the dead sector. There was silence on the channel for a long moment. Then Junho's voice returned, careful and quiet. That's impossible. The dead sector has been empty for 300 years. I know, sir, but I have the recording. The signal came from coordinates deep in the dead sector. It's encrypted using old mathematical codes that I've never seen before. Ancient stuff, but I managed to decode part of it. What did it say? Dongwu looked at his screen again, making sure he had read it correctly. It has coordinates and a timestamp. 24 hours from now. And Captain, there's something else. The signal came from more than one source. I detected at least 12 different transmission points, all sending the same message. On the command ship, Junho shared the news with So Young and the other survivors. They gathered in the small meeting room, a mix of different species all trying to make sense of what they had heard. It could be a trap, said Wu Jin, a sensor specialist who had escaped from the battle. The Devourers might be using the dead sector as a base. They could be trying to lure the survivors into one place to finish us off. But why would they need to trick us? Asked So Young. They already beat us. They could just hunt us down ship by ship. Junho looked at the star maps showing the dead sector. It was a large area of space that had once been home to humanity and several other species. 300 years ago, all contact had been lost. Search ships sent to investigate had found empty worlds and abandoned space stations. Whatever had happened there, it had been complete. Humanity was advanced, he said slowly. Not as advanced as some species, but they had good technology. If somehow they survived, if they've been hiding out there all this time, then why didn't they help us before? Asked Wu Jin. Why wait until now? So Young looked up from her notes. Maybe they couldn't help before. Maybe they needed time to prepare for something like the Devourers. It sounded impossible. But then again, 3 days ago, the idea of the Devourers defeating the entire Galactic Council had seemed impossible too. Junho thought about all the impossible things that had happened lately. Maybe one more wouldn't hurt. How many ships do we have that can make the journey to those coordinates? He asked. 15, maybe 20 if we push the engines hard, replied his engineer. But Captain, that's a one-way trip. We don't have enough fuel to come back. Junho nodded. He had expected that. Signal the other ships. Tell them what we've learned. Let each captain decide for themselves. We're not ordering anyone to come. Over the next few hours, the refugee fleet talked and argued and planned. Some ships decided to head for the outer rim, hoping to find safe colonies far from the Devourers. Others wanted to try to reach the core worlds and help with the evacuation efforts there. But 17 ships decided to take the chance on the dead sector. As they prepared to leave their asteroid hiding place, So Young made one more discovery. She had been studying the energy patterns from the mysterious signal, comparing them to everything in the Council database. Captain, she said, her voice excited but scared, I found something. The energy signature from that signal. It's similar to Devourer technology, but different. Like someone took Devourer principles and changed them, improved them. What does that mean? I don't know. But whoever sent that signal has technology that's related to the Devourers somehow. Either they learned from studying the machines or... She paused, not wanting to finish the thought, or what? Or they know about the Devourers because they've fought them before. Junho looked out at the stars of the dead sector. Somewhere out there, something was waiting for them. Something that knew about the Devourers and had technology that could match them. He just hoped that whatever it was on their side. Set course for the coordinates, he ordered. Let's go find out who's calling us home. The 17 ships left their hiding place and headed into the darkness of the dead sector, carrying the last hopes of a dying galaxy into the unknown. The human fleet moved like death itself. Ji-hoon watched from the observation deck of the refugee ship as the dark vessels spread across space in perfect formation. They didn't move like normal ships at all. One moment they were in one place, the next they were somewhere else entirely, as if they could skip through space itself. The attack begins in 30 minutes, announced Captain Soo-jin over the communication system. All refugee vessels will maintain position here, while the expeditionary force engages the Devourer fleet. Through his telescope, Ji-hoon could see the Devourer machines in the distance. They had detected the human fleet and were moving to intercept. 300 massive triangular ships, each one a floating city of destruction. They had seemed unstoppable when they destroyed the Council fleets. Now facing the humans, they looked almost small. Look at how they move, whispered Yunji, one of the human pilots who had come aboard to observe the battle. She was young and pale, with strange silver marks along her neck that seemed to pulse with their own light. The Devourers think they're facing another normal fleet. They don't understand what we've become. As Ji-hoon watched, the human ships began to change. Their hulls rippled and flowed like water, reshaping themselves for battle. Some grew longer and thinner like spears of darkness. Others became broad and heavy, bristling with weapons that hurt to look at directly. How is that possible? Asked So Young, who had been studying the human technology since they arrived. Ships can't just change shape like that. Yoonji smiled, but her smile was cold and sharp. Our ships aren't built the way yours are. They're grown, shaped by thought and will. Each one is alive in its own way. The first contact came without warning. One moment the two fleets were approaching each other across empty space. The next moment, human ships were appearing inside the Devourer formation, materializing from nothing like ghosts made real. The Devourers tried to respond, turning their massive weapons toward the sudden threat. But the human ships moved too fast, phasing in and out of normal space. They struck at parts of the Devourer machines that shouldn't have been vulnerable, targeting systems that the Council forces had never even known existed. "They know exactly where to hit," breathed Ji-hoon. "It's like they've fought these things before." "We have," said Yoonji simply. "Not these exact machines, but others like them. The Devourers have been spreading across multiple galaxies for millions of years. We've been tracking them, studying them, learning their weaknesses." On his sensor screen, Ji-hoon watched as human fighters swarmed around a Devourer ship like angry insects. The fighters were tiny compared to the massive machine, but they moved with impossible coordination. They struck at specific points on the Devourer's hull, and each strike seemed to cause disproportionate damage. "How are your pilots able to coordinate like that?" asked So-young. Yoonji touched the silver marks on her neck. "We share thoughts directly through quantum neural links. When I fight, I'm not just one person. I'm connected to every other pilot in my squadron. We think as one mind, fight as one body." The idea made Ji-hoon's skin crawl, but he couldn't deny its effectiveness. The human pilots moved like they could read each other's minds because they could. They anticipated each other's actions perfectly, covering weaknesses and amplifying strengths. A Devourer ship tried to ram one of the human vessels, but the human ship simply faded away like smoke. It reappeared behind the Devourer and fired a weapon that Ji-hoon had never seen before. The beam wasn't just destructive. It seemed to unmake things at a fundamental level, causing parts of the Devourer ship to simply cease to exist. "What kind of weapon is that?" he asked. "Null beam," Yoonji replied. "It disrupts the quantum fields that hold matter together. Very effective against machines like the Devourers." More human ships were entering the battle now. Some of them were so large they dwarfed even the Devourer vessels. These massive ships hung back from the main fighting, but their weapons reached across impossible distances. When they fired, entire sections of Devourer ships simply vanished. This isn't a battle, Ji-hoon realized. It's an execution. The Devourers were trying to adapt, changing their tactics and weapon configurations as they always did when facing new threats. But the humans seemed to anticipate every change. Every time a Devourer ship tried something new, the human forces had a counter ready. "You've been preparing for this specific fight," said So-young. "Haven't you?" Yoonji nodded. "For 300 years. We've run millions of battle simulations, tested every possible Devourer configuration. We know how they think, how they adapt, how they learn, and we know how to stop them." Admiral Kyung-ho's voice came over the communication system, speaking to the refugee fleet. "Observer vessels, you are witnessing the end of the Devourer threat in this galaxy. Our forces are achieving all primary objectives ahead of schedule." Ji-hoon looked at his screens. The human admiral was right. In less than an hour, they had destroyed or disabled most of the Devourer fleet. The massive machines that had seemed unstoppable were being torn apart with surgical precision. But as he watched the battle, Ji-hoon began to notice something disturbing about the human ships and their crews. When the humans thought no one was looking, their forms seemed to flicker and change. Sometimes Yoonji appeared slightly transparent, as if she wasn't entirely there. Other times, multiple human voices spoke in perfect unison from different ships across the fleet. "What did you do to yourselves?" he asked quietly. Yoonji looked at him with those strange, reflecting eyes. "We did what was necessary. The Devourers couldn't be defeated by normal means, so we stopped being normal. We exist partially outside regular space-time now. We can phase between dimensions, share consciousness across vast distances, reshape matter with directed thought." "But you're still human?" She was quiet for a long moment, watching the last Devourer ships fall to the human weapons. "We remember being human. We remember what it was like to be limited to one body, one mind, one dimension. But that's not what we are anymore." The battle was ending. The Devourer fleet that had destroyed the greatest military forces in the galaxy was nothing but debris and scrap metal. The human ships began to regroup, their dark hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. "So what happens now?" asked Ji-hoon. "Now we hunt down the rest of them," Yoonji replied. "Every Devourer ship, every construction facility, every trace of their presence in this galaxy. We'll remove them all." Her voice carried a certainty that was both comforting and terrifying. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had demonstrated that they were superior to the Devourers in every way that mattered. They were faster, smarter, more adaptable, and far more ruthless. But as Ji-hoon watched them celebrate their victory, he wondered what price they had paid for that superiority. The humans had saved the galaxy, but in doing so they had become something that was no longer entirely human, something that might be more dangerous than the Devourers themselves. The galaxy was saved, but it would never be the same. Hee-jin stood in the council chamber of the rebuilt station orbiting Nexus Prime. Through the great windows, she could see human ships moving between the stars like silent guardians. 3 months had passed since the defeat of the Devourers and the work of rebuilding had begun. But everything felt different now. The casualty reports from the outer colonies are final, announced Do-hyun, the human liaison assigned to work with the surviving council members. He spoke in the same calm, controlled voice that all the humans used now. We were able to save 60% of the population in the affected systems. 60%. That meant billions of people were still alive who would have died if the humans hadn't returned. Hee-jin should have felt grateful. She did feel grateful, but she also felt something else. Fear. What about the Devourer remnants? Asked Admiral Taeho. The old admiral had survived the great battle, though barely. His ship had been one of the few council vessels to escape the initial attack. Now he served as the military coordinator for the reconstruction efforts. All eliminated, Do-hyun replied. Our hunter fleets have swept through 17 star systems. Every Devourer ship, every construction facility, every trace of their technology has been removed. The threat no longer exists. The humans had been thorough. In 3 months, they had done what everyone thought would take years. Their ships appeared in systems throughout the galaxy, hunting down every piece of Devourer technology. They didn't just destroy it, they unmade it, using those terrible weapons that erased things from existence itself. And the reconstruction? Asked Woo-jin, who now served as the head of the civilian recovery efforts. Proceeding ahead of schedule, Do-hyun said. Our fabrication ships have restored basic infrastructure to most of the damaged worlds. Full restoration will take approximately 2 years. The human fabrication ships were miracles of technology. They could reshape entire planets, rebuilding cities and ecosystems that had been destroyed by the Devourers. But watching them work was disturbing. The ships seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, their crews moving like ghosts through structures that flickered between real and unreal. Do-hyun, said Hye-jin carefully, the people are grateful for everything humanity has done, but they're also worried. Your people have abilities that seem almost godlike. What are your intentions for the galaxy? The human liaison turned those strange, reflecting eyes toward her. For a moment his form seemed to flicker, becoming slightly transparent. Then he smiled, but it wasn't entirely human anymore. We have no desire to rule, he said. We will protect this galaxy from external threats and help rebuild what was lost. But the day-to-day governance remains with you and the other council species. But you could rule if you wanted to, Taeho said bluntly. Your technology is so far beyond ours that we couldn't stop you if you decided to take control. Yes, Do-hyun agreed simply. We could. But ruling was never the goal. We transformed ourselves to fight the Devourers. Now that they're gone, we'll continue to serve as guardians. Guardians. That was the word the humans used to describe themselves now. It sounded noble and protective. But Hye-jin remembered watching their ships phase in and out of reality during the battle, their crews speaking in perfect unison across impossible distances. Guardians they might be, but they were guardians that existed beyond normal understanding. After the meeting, Hye-jin walked to the observation deck where Min-soo often spent his time. The young Keltari had been promoted to head of communications after surviving the great battle. He stood looking out at the stars, watching human patrol ships move through space. You look troubled, she said. I've been monitoring human communications, Min-soo replied. Or trying to. Most of their signals are on frequencies that don't exist in normal space. But sometimes I catch fragments. What kind of fragments? They talk about things that happened in other galaxies, other dimensions. They mention time periods that don't make sense. I think when they changed themselves to fight the Devourers, they became something that exists across multiple realities. Hye-jin felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean for us? I don't know, but I don't think they experience time the way we do anymore. To them, past and future might be just different directions to travel. Through the window they watched as a human ship materialized near the station. It had come from somewhere else, some other dimension or time, carrying out the mysterious business of the Guardians. As they watched, several human figures became visible on the ship's hull, working on repairs without any kind of protective suits. They moved through space as easily as walking through air. "Are they still human?" asked Minsu. Before Hyojin could answer, a new voice spoke behind them. "That's a good question." They turned to see Captain Yunji approaching. The young human pilot had been assigned to the station as part of the liaison team. She moved with that same fluid grace that all the humans displayed now, as if gravity was just a suggestion she chose to follow. "We remember being human," she said, joining them at the window. "We remember what it felt like to be limited to one body, one world, one timeline. But those memories feel like dreams now, distant and unreal. Do you regret it?" asked Hijin. "Giving up your humanity to become what you are now?" Yunji was quiet for a long moment, watching her people work on their impossible ship. 300 years ago, we faced a choice. We could remain human and watch the galaxy die, or we could change and save everyone. We chose to change, but was it worth it? "Ask me in 1,000 years, Yunji replied. "When you've seen what the galaxy becomes under our protection. Ask me then if the price was worth paying." As if to emphasize her words, the human ship outside completed its work and faded away, returning to whatever dimension it had come from. The casual violation of natural law that the humans performed every day was becoming normal. But Hyojin wondered if normal was something the galaxy could afford anymore. Later that night, she stood alone in her quarters, looking out at the stars. The Devourers were gone. The galaxy was safe. Billions of people were alive who would have died. By any measure, this was a victory. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they had simply traded one type of threat for another. The humans insisted they had no desire to rule, and she believed them. But what happened when immortal, multidimensional beings decided that the galaxy needed saving from itself? Outside her window, a human patrol ship flickered into existence, checked the area for threats that only it could detect, and vanished again. The Guardians were always watching, always protecting, always there even when they weren't. Hyojin thought about the old human saying, "Who watches the watchers?" But with these new humans, the question was more complicated. How do you watch beings who exist in multiple dimensions and can travel through time itself? The answer, she realized, was that you don't. You trust them and hope that whatever they had become, they still remembered enough of their humanity to care about the people they had saved. In the depths of space, the human ships continued their eternal patrol, carrying the last traces of a species that had sacrificed everything to save a galaxy that would never fully understand what they had given up. And perhaps that was for the best. Space broke open like glass. Wu Jin stared at his sensor screen and rubbed his eyes. The readings made no sense. One moment there had been nothing but empty space at the coordinates. The next moment reality itself seemed to crack and tear. Through the cracks came light that hurt to look at directly. "Captain Junho, are you seeing this?" He called into his radio. "We're seeing it," came the reply from the command ship. "What in the name of the stars is that?" The 17 refugee ships had arrived at the coordinates from the mysterious signal, just as the timestamp indicated. They had expected to find other ships, maybe a hidden base, possibly nothing at all. They had not expected to watch space itself rip apart. The tears in reality grew larger. Through them, Wu Jin could see flashes of something massive moving on the other side. Ships, but not like any ships he had ever seen. They were long and sleek, dark as the space between stars. As he watched, the first one pushed through the tear and entered normal space. It was huge. Not as big as a Devourer ship, but big enough to house thousands of people. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to focus on. Strange energy patterns flowed along its surface like living things. "Wu Jin, I'm reading massive energy signatures," called So Young from her research ship. "The power levels are off the charts. Whatever technology they're using, it's beyond anything in our databases." More ships came through the tiers. Dozens of them. Then hundreds, each one different from the others, but all sharing that same dark predatory look. Some were long and thin like knives. Others were broad and heavy like hammers. A few were so strange that Wu Jin couldn't even guess what they were supposed to do. But the most amazing thing wasn't the ships themselves. It was what came with them. "Captain," Wu Jin whispered into his radio, "I'm reading structures." "Massive structures?" "They're bringing entire space stations through those tiers." Indeed, behind the fleet came things that defied description. Stations the size of moons, their surfaces covered with weapons and docking bays and things that hurt to look at. One of them was shaped like a giant ring, spinning slowly as it emerged from the tear. Another looked like a crystal mountain turned upside down, its point facing forward like a spear. The largest structure was so big that it took several minutes to come through. It was a city in space, a place where millions of people could live and work. Its surface was covered with lights that pulsed in patterns like a heartbeat made of stars. "This is impossible," breathed Junho over the radio. How did they hide all this? How did they build it? As if in answer to his question, one of the dark ships turned toward the refugee fleet. A new voice came over the communication channels, speaking in the old diplomatic language that hadn't been used since the Galactic Council was formed. The accent was strange, like someone learning to speak their own language all over again. "This is Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Identify yourselves and state your purpose in this sector." Terran. That meant human. But humans had been gone for 300 years. Junho activated his own radio, his voice shaking slightly. "This is Captain Junho of the Galactic Council Refugee Fleet. We received your signal. We're survivors from the battle with the Devourers. Admiral Taeho sent a distress call before." He paused, not sure how to explain what had happened. "We know about Admiral Taeho," the human voice replied. "We know about the battle. We know about the Devourers. Prepare to receive a boarding party. We have much to discuss." One of the human ships approached Junho's vessel. It moved without making any sound that the sensors could detect, gliding through space like a fish through water. As it got closer, Woo-jin could see details that made his skin crawl. The ship's hull wasn't just dark. It seemed to absorb light completely, making it look like a hole in space. A small shuttle launched from the human ship and docked with Junho's vessel. The airlock cycled, and 3 figures stepped through. They were human, but not quite like the humans from the old records. They were taller, their movements too smooth and precise. Their eyes reflected light like an animal's eyes in the dark. They wore uniforms made of some material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. The leader stepped forward and removed his helmet. His face was human enough with black hair and dark eyes, but there was something else there, something that made Junho want to step back. "I am Captain Soo-jin," the human said. His voice was calm and controlled. "I speak for Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho. You said you're survivors from the Devourer attack." "Yes," Junho replied. "The Council fleets were destroyed. The Devourers are moving toward the core worlds. Millions of people will die." Soo-jin nodded as if this was exactly what he had expected to hear. "How many Devourer ships attacked the Council fleets?" "Around 300, said So-young, who had joined them in the meeting room. "They destroyed everything. We barely escaped." 300, Soo-jin repeated. He looked at the other humans with him, and something passed between them. Not words, but some kind of silent communication. "And how many ships do they have in total?" "We think maybe 1,000, replied Junho. "Maybe more. They keep building new ones from the materials they consume." Soo-jin was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then he looked directly at Junho with those strange, reflecting eyes. "Captain, I need you to understand something. The humans you remember from your history books are gone. We are what they became when they learned about the Devourers. 300 years ago, we detected the first signs of the Devourer expansion in a distant galaxy. We knew they would come here eventually. What did you do?" asked So-young. "We prepared," Soo-jin replied simply. "We changed ourselves. We developed new technologies. We learned to exist partially outside normal space and time. We became something that could face the Devourers on equal terms." As he spoke, more human ships continued to emerge from the tiers in space. Woo-jin watched his sensors and tried to count them, but there were too many. Hundreds became thousands. The human fleet was massive, far larger than the Council forces had ever been. "How many ships do you have?" he asked. Soo-jin smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Enough. Admiral Kyung-ho wants to speak with your fleet commanders. We're going to coordinate a response to the Devourer threat." "You're going to fight them?" Junho asked, hardly daring to hope. "Captain," Soo-jin said, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to press down on the room. "We didn't spend 300 years hiding in another dimension just to watch the galaxy burn. We came back to finish what the Devourers started." Through the viewports, Junho could see the human fleet spreading out through space. Their ships moved in perfect formation like pieces of a vast machine. And still more kept coming through the tears in reality, an endless stream of dark vessels emerging from whatever place they had been hiding. For the first time in days, Junho felt something he had thought was lost forever: hope.